Well, hello everybody. Doug Rucker here with DougRuckerSchool.com, DougRuckerStore.com, and I had a couple of questions texted to me by a couple of my online school students, and their question mainly was, and I know this was also a couple guys that we were doing rigs for, building rigs for, wanting 200 feet of pressure hose. I don't ever recommend using 200 feet of pressure hose in one continuous length. The problem I have with that is if a hose busts, man, you've got 200 feet of hose, you've got to pull off your reel and then you've got to roll it all up. For instance, just a week or so ago, we had on this 100-foot hose, we had a small little pin leak right here where this red tape is. So our guys had to take this hose off, and fortunately we had to have another reel on the truck that's got 150 feet of hose, so they're able to adapt and just keep going, but they have to take this off. And if you can imagine on a job rolling up 200 feet of hose, it's a pain in the neck. And then also, if that's your only hose on your reel, you're basically down. You can't clean anymore because you've got a busted hose. And so it's much easier to replace a 100-foot hose with, let's say, another 100-foot hose if you've got it on your truck, or a 50-foot hose that you're carrying around as a spare. That's what we always do, is we always have a 100-foot, two 100-foot hoses on our reel, and they're connected using this 3/8 inch bushing. I'm going to show you how we do that in just a second. But that way, if a hose busts, we can replace it, and oftentimes all we need to do is add that 50-footer. But if not, we've got that other reel because we've got two machines on the truck that we can pull off hose and use on that. But a lot of guys don't have that capability. They don't have two machines, two hose reels. They've got one pressure hose reel that's got 200 feet of hose, and it's either 50 footers or 100 footers or however they do that. But the main point is I just don't recommend the 200-foot hose length, simply because once it busts and you don't have enough spare, then you're down and you've got to leave the job and go either get your hose fixed or go find some more hose or whatever. So the rule is, whatever hose that you have on your hose reel, always have some sort of backup that you're going to be able to finish the job that day. All it does is set you back a few minutes to take off the hose and replace it with the backup. When our guys have a hose that busts, they've got that red stucco tape that we use for protecting outlets and doorbells and ceiling fans and things of that nature. So they know to wherever the hole is to put a piece of red tape around it, and then we put the red tape around the whole roll, so that we know red means, hey, don't use this hose is busted, you can't use it. So red means stop, don't use it. But anyway, when we've got 200 feet of hose, what we always do is, let's say this is your connector. We've got these two that connect, and we use this 3/8 bushing. So one end of your hose is usually always a swivel, the other end is not, so this will swivel here. So the way we usually do it is on the hose reel, we will put the swivel end up into the hose reel, but we use a quick connect on the end so we can easily remove the hose if we need to. Some guys will put this right into the fitting that goes into the hose reel for the manifold. But anyway, that's how we'll do it. That goes to the hose reel, and then you come over here and we have the other end of the next hose, the connecting hose. The swivel end of it meets up with the non-swivel end of this. So all you're going to do, of course, is thread it and pipe it, and then you're going to screw this end onto the non-swivel end first, get it nice and tight, and then your swivel end, you can use the wrench to screw it in, and then you don't have to worry about the hose twisting all around and twisting up and that type of thing. And then this tends to lay a lot flatter. on the hose reel, so you don't have a big piece bulking up at the hose reel. This will kind of lay nice and flat for you, and just be much better hose management for you. So if the hose does split, all they have to do is put a wrench on here out in the field and a wrench on here, and they can take it off, connect another one on if they want. But like I said, we've got that other hose reel, so we can roll off hose of it and hook up and keep working, and just roll the busted hose up, throw it in the truck, and then it comes back to the shop and goes out for repair. If we're going to have it repaired, normally what I do is, if the hose is not that old and everything looks in good shape, I'll go ahead and have this cut off and have a new end put on it and keep using it. If I look at the hose and I see it's kind of worn and you're starting to see some of the metal down past the rubber coating, then I'll just chunk the whole hose. I don't use it anymore, because most oftentimes once you split a hose once, it's pretty much going to start splitting. So if it's kind of worn and we can still use it, I mean, if it's not worn and I think we can still get some life out of it, then I'll have it repaired. If not, I'll chunk it. But I always try to replace our hoses prior to them getting bad, and before they get a hole in them or whatever. So I'll take them off. They're still good hoses, and we have a pile over here of 100-foot hoses that we use as spares or backups for, you know, really long jobs that you need that extra hose length on it. So that's how we do it. And then of course down on the end where our gun goes, we always put the Mossmatic hose swivel here. Of course, you're Teflon taping and putting your little lock seal on it. And then we have another plug that goes off the end of here, and then our ball valve setup goes right here. Okay, and so that way, if we have one split and we have to go to a different hose or put on a new hose or take a hose off the hose reel and eliminate that busted one, this ball valve can come right off and go to the new hose that we're going to use, because we set up every hose just like this with a Mossmatic swivel and our plug coming off of the end. If you use the socket off the end, then you just take this and make it the socket. That's up to you how you do it. But for us, it's always the plug points the way of the water. So that's basically why I don't like using 200-foot hoses. If you're using a 200-foot hose and you don't have another 200-foot hose or two 100-foot hose to replace on the job, you're down. So think ahead in those situations of how are you going to stay up and running if a hose busts, and make sure you have the adequate backups in order to keep you working so you don't have to leave a job. The last thing you ever want to do is have a hose bust on a job and you don't have a backup. That's just stinks. And so it's kind of like fantasy football. Always have the backup to the backup. You got a big ringer, you want to have his backup. So on your hoses, always have backup hoses. Hope that helps you guys. That's the reason I don't like 200-foot hoses, is they're just a lot harder to manage, especially when they bust. And it's much easier to replace a 100-foot piece of hose or a 50-footer than it is a 200-footer. Plus the 200 are just much more expensive. So anyway, hope that helps you guys. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Hey, do me a favor, leave a comment, ask me a question down below, share the video out, help some other people. But basically, leave me a comment, ask me a question. I'd be glad to answer your questions if I can help you in any way. Y'all have an awesome day.